on Saturday evening, and they
did
have made every effort to make it as like the normal experience as possible.
Right.
And in fact, we very quickly forgot that there were any restrictions. They were really trying, and they were doing extremely well, I think, partly as a result.
Yeah.
The place was full.
And so you enjoyed that experience.
Oh, very much. Yeah, it was a huge release from this ghastly atmosphere of misery that's.
Are they also taking names in restaurants as well?
Well, a lot of these things, they can, and people can give them. But a lot of people don't understand these are merely guidelines.
Yeah.
This isn't a legal requirement.
Right.
And of course, there are very serious data protection issues with what happens to this information if it's given, which is a strong deterrent for anyone to pursue it. I mean, there have been instances of where people have had information taken and there've then been improper approaches made.
Well, this is it. I mean, the fact that the
very
pubs
bad things happen. So a lot of them are frankly not bothering, and there is it's not a legal obligation. It's a guideline, as with so many of these things. But people are bluffed into kowtowing.
But also, just because the guy behind the bar says, "Don't worry, we won't do anything with your information," it's not much of an assurance, really, is it, that they're not going to do something with your information? But the other thing that I find slightly perplexing about all of it is I was sitting out on this terrace and I thought to myself, and I asked the landlord, I said, "Look, if somebody comes into your pub downstairs, very far away from me, sits in a corner, very far away from everybody else, and it turns out later to have had COVID-19. According to the government, everyone who's been in the pub today, regardless of whether they were even there at the same time, is supposed to self-isolate for 14 days. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, we can all see that regulations of this kind are A, unenforceable, and B, almost certainly laughable. I think the number of people infected now with COVID-19 is said to be one person in 2,200. What are your chances of running into one of those?
Yeah.
Especially given that they're quite likely, for the most part, to be over 80 years of age.
Yeah.
There are undoubtedly doughty people over 80 who do go down to the pub, and God bless them, but you don't see many of them.
No.
Around where I come
and probably
from.
most of those.
It's just an overstatement, as it has been from the beginning. It is a huge, gigantic overstatement of the risk.
It certainly does seem to be now. I mean, I think you and I will still disagree about the beginnings of it and all of that, but certainly now it seems ridiculous. And I was fascinated as well by another piece in your column this week about the story from the coffee shop owner who was spoken to by the police in the same way that Nigel Farage was spoken to by the police because apparently Ed Davey complained about him coming back from America and not going into quarantine. I'd quite like to see Ed Davey going into quarantine for quite a long time.
Well, you can think of a lot of people you might like, but let's not be vindictive. Hey, let's try and believe in freedom for all. As after all, it is our case. No, the police where they did these sort of things. In some cases, it wasn't the police; it would be council officials.
Yeah.
But one hears quite a lot of people trying to run an honest takeaway business being bothered in this officious, bureaucratic way. But when the police do it, and the person involved a year ago had his shop burgled and trashed, and they did nothing, and reported drug dealing activity in the park opposite his shop, and they did nothing. But the police turn up and give him a hard time for allowing somebody to have a cup of tea because it's raining inside.
Yeah.
You do sense, don't you, that authority has been turned away backwards. It's no longer doing what we elected it to do, what we pay our taxes for it to do. It's doing something else that it wants to do, which has nothing to do with us.
No, exactly. And also, there are so many exceptional situations, for example, that have been going on since the beginning of the lockdown. We've all been going to supermarkets. We've all been walking quite close to one another in shops, which have been allowed to stay open. So much of it seems contradictory to me.
It is contradictory, and if you're really concerned about national health as well, the continued shutting of gyms and swimming pools is a nonsense. That will do more damage to the health of the nation than COVID-19.
Yeah,
depriving people of exercise is a disastrous thing. Exercise is the principal pillar of health, and if people can't have it, then they will become ill, and they will age faster, and they will become more of a burden on the health service. It's a madness, and it can't be justified. If you're going to let people go to pubs and restaurants, how can you possibly forbid them to go to the gym or to the swimming pool? It is.
But what do you make, Peter, though, of the people who you would think mostly be otherwise sensible? And I'm talking about commentators who appear on all sorts of broadcast media, who write in newspapers, who seem completely opposite to you, worried about this lockdown being released too early, worried about people going out drinking like they were in Old Compton Street on Saturday night, and who generally are very much for this kind of extension, if you like, of self-imprisonment.
I've been trying to work out where the division lies. I mean, it's not a left-right division.
Right.
It's not wholly an old and young division. I know of older people who are as overcome by panic as many young people. I think it lies to some extent in character. I do think I've been very fortunate in two ways. One, I was brought up in this country when it was still free, and I'm used to being free, and therefore I feel very hemmed in and angry when anyone attempts to take away any of the freedom that I regard as my birthright. Secondly, I've done a bit of traveling in the world, and I'm a lot more suspicious, I think, as a result of authority and of what I'm told than other people are. So that's my reason for being in doubt. But I think most people, particularly who've grown up in the television age, have grown up much more conformist than I did. And this is basically, it's a conformist belief. Everyone thinks it, so everyone thinks it. And it's like the sort of nationalization of the sense of humor that the television and the internet have done. Everybody laughs at the same jokes. Everybody thinks the same thing. Yeah. Everybody has the same opinion of everything from Mars bars to Margaret Thatcher. It's all the same. And people are very uncomfortable about being outside it. I think it's part of it. Also, I think some people just don't have the antenna for danger. I still say, to me, that the moment this came, it felt like a sort of Sarajevo. Yeah. Something had happened, deep down in the structure of Western society, which meant that bad things were coming. And I felt it instinctively. I thought, please not let's go careering down this slope like that. The way in which the Sarajevo assassination in 1914 snowballed into this terrible war. I feel this snowballing going all the time. None of these other things, the taking the knee and all the rest of it, the tearing down of statues, would have happened if it hadn't been for this.
No. But how Brexit related do you think it could be, though? Because there does seem to be a kind of Brexit attitude going on as well, where there was an element being spoken of at the weekend, that the people who were going out drinking and enjoying themselves and sort of being careless with their health and everybody else's were the kind of thick people. There was this kind of sense that the thick racists were back out drinking again. They must be Brexit supporters. You know what I mean? There's always that kind of background to it.
But that is the modern snobbery, isn't it?
Yeah.
That people love to look down on those with whom they disagree. And also there is a large disenfranchised part of the population which is still quite traditional and still likes going to pubs and things like this, which other parts of the population don't really sympathise with. And the class divisions in this country still exist, but they've shifted. And I think that's part of it. But in political terms, I don't think it is. One of the interesting things about this is that it's pushed the whole European issue way out of people's minds. And when it comes thumping back in a very big way, which it will do towards the end of the year, then I think we're going to be quite surprised.
Yes, I think so. I mean, I wonder whether people have not just forgotten about it, but also because they feel that this is a bigger issue and this is more frightening, that actually Brexit doesn't look so frightening anymore.
Maybe. Well, they may find that that's not so. When it's added on to the terrible economic problems which we are now beginning ever so slightly to experience, when it's added onto those, the possibility of our being treated as a third country and the motorways in Kent becoming gigantic lorry parks, when that happens, I think people are going to start thinking that it is quite important, which it is.
Well, yeah. Let me finish up with.
I speak as someone who has for many years wanted us to leave, but not like this.
Right. Let me finish up with the freebies that are being thrown at Covent Garden and surrounding environs in the theatre business, basically. This is kind of admission by the government that this is not furlough money. This is basically rescue money, not to reopen, but to stay shut.
Well, I think it's a bit much. People would be trolleyed out onto the radio this morning saying how wonderful it is the government's done this. It would have been a lot more wonderful if the government hadn't shut down in the first place, wouldn't it?
We say, and I ask you to say with us, lift up your voices in this great meeting in the heart of England, and to all the world a message: England lives and marches on.